Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Neha Mahajan. I'm the Business Development and Outreach Manager here at the Chugh Law Firm. And I'm joined by our legal expert, Dilawar Fazal, from our New York office. Hi, Dilawar.
Hi, Neha. Thank you so
Dilawar,
much.
this is fun. Welcome everybody to the 30 Minutes with Chugh. It's our weekly live where we talk about some pressing issues, some pressing questions that you may have. And this is a live session. And you can drop in your question wherever you're watching us, whether you're watching us on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, wherever you're watching us. Feel free to drop in your questions and we'll try to answer them within these 30 minutes. Today, we're going to talk about return to work. Dilawar, I was reading news and there's some research that took place. There was a poll, really, the Gallup. They did a poll between October and April of this year, and they found that 40% of office goers do not want to come back to office physically. They prefer working from home, right? I mean, well, everybody wants to work from home as much as possible. Like, who knew that we could continue to work from home, right? But the pandemic has taught us all of that. And only 21% of people really, are okay about going into workplace. So that brings me to my first question, really. And I really want to understand this. Workplaces are implementing all these policies about getting back to work, right? At least in New York, New Jersey area, they've opened up. California has opened up, right? And the entire US has kind of opened up. What if the employee doesn't want to come back to work? They want to continue working remotely for whatever reason. What do you say from a legal perspective?
Yeah, Neha, this is a great question. And I must say, even I don't want to return to work. The flexibility of working from home, like doing your daily chores and also working is great. And I think people have gotten so acquainted to it that they literally feel that they can work from anywhere. And I think this is something which pandemic has taught us as well.
Yeah.
So yes, and this is a great question. And the answer to is it depends where the employer is situated. What does the specific state has laws for such specific circumstances? But primarily what the law says is, and what the different jurisdictions are developing with this, is that if your employee says for whatever reasons, primarily for health reasons, that he cannot come into the office or he feels that he's at risk, right? Then you should provide them with reasonable accommodations. And what are those reasonable accommodations, you would probably ask me? Those reasonable accommodations are providing them with flexibility in schedule. Like, tell them you can come into the office probably 1 day a week, 2 days a week. Or tell them if your work can be done remotely. Then sure, like you do not have to. But if it is a necessity, it's a job necessity per se, that the employees have to be there. For example, like there are certain professions where the employees have to be in the premises, right? So that, I think, is the area which should be of concern. And for those kind of employees, there is a thing called undue hardship. If providing those accommodations to the employee causes undue hardship for the employers, then yes, employers can tell their employees that if you do not come to the office, we might have to terminate you.
So employers can actually do that?
Yes, they can.
The party's over, people.
But only if it is creating undue hardship for the employers. They need to follow that standard.
Okay. And now that's a gray area, right? That is something. Yeah. And, and people, there's a lot of fear around the pandemic, around the whole virus. We keep hearing news about the new variant that's coming in and a lot of stuff, right? So what if an employee, doesn't want to come back to work because they're genuinely scared. They're fearful of the virus, and they fear, or they have someone at home that is possibly a high risk person at home, a family member, right? And they fear that they might bring the virus home. So although the numbers are showing there are not no more very little hospitalizations, almost zero deaths noted. This week in New York and New Jersey region and many other hospitals across America. But the pandemic isn't over, right? So what rights do the employees have in this situation?
Yeah, I was definitely going to come down to this as well. So employees can definitely let the employers know about, their fears
Yeah,
about the high risk. Like if they have someone at home who's at high risk and they fear that they probably might contract the virus and then can infect that other person. So for those employees, definitely the reasonable accommodations come into place for those employees. Exactly,
okay,
this is where the employers have the duty to provide those employees reasonable accommodations, tell them to work from home for as long as they can, or for
yeah,
as long as the pandemic persists. This is like a possibility which most of the employers are taking into consideration, you know,
okay.
and this is what we have been advising our clients as well. Like when there are at high risk employees or people who are working at your workplace and they are telling that they have high risk people in their homes,
Yeah,
definitely, give them as many concessions as you can. But in terms of rights, this is a developing field, right?
yeah,
This is new and it's developing. Per
yeah,
se, the employees do not have many rights for now. They do have a lot of rights, but in this particular field, yes, they cannot, like. But if they can say yes, we are at high risk ourselves. We have underlying health conditions. We are very old ourselves. Like if an employee himself is 60 or 65 years old,
yeah.
right? He himself is at high risk. So
Mm,
there is a different, thing for them altogether. So
right.
at risk employees are definitely, provided more flexibility, more rights
Yeah.
than those who are
Yeah.
already vaccinated.
Yeah. And, now my next question is around, um, are employers immune from liability against damages and injury claims resulting from COVID-19 exposure?
Uh, this is something which we have been hearing a lot.
Yeah.
Trust me, this is something literally all of our clients have asked us. What if our employee contracts the virus at the
Yeah.
workplace? What is our liability?
Right.
So the answer to your question is no. There is no federal statute which gives employers a blanket immunity from this liability. Usually some of the states have had like their state's legislation which provides certain employees or certain
Okay.
employers that immunity, right? Like for instance, frontline health workers,
Right.
people who are working in the you know uh,
Healthcare.
hospitals, or
Yeah.
those kind of people. Yes, they
Right.
do have that immunity, but
Okay.
only in certain states, not in all the states. But this is also developing, and some of the states like Georgia, for example, and there are a couple of other states as well, North Carolina, uh, Utah, Wyoming, they
Yeah.
have this legislation in place where they are protecting the employers.
Okay.
But let me tell you again, this is not a blanket immunity. It
Right.
has an underlying theme to it. And that underlying theme is that the employer should not conduct themselves in a manner which would result in gross negligence, reckless misconduct, or intentional infliction of harm. What it essentially means is that the employer should be careful. They should
Yeah.
have proper procedures in place. They should have social distancing. They should
Yeah.
have a return to work policy in place.
Yeah.
If they are not making an environment in the office which is COVID friendly, what I mean by that is that they should have, like, for example, let's take an example of our office in New York.
Yeah.
What we
Yeah.
have now in New York office is that we have these panels. Every desk has a big panel, and then there is like the desk which used to be like right next to each other. We
Yeah.
have
Space them out.
distance them. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have spaced them out. We have distanced them.
Right.
So these kind of things are going to be really important for the employers to know,
Right.
that they should make the workplace safe and
Mhm.
then ask those employees to come back to the office.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, the measures that we all started taking at the beginning of the pandemic, I guess, needs to stay put. Making sure you're washing your hands in office, at regular intervals. Really, like I have an alarm set up every few minutes to go wash my hands, making sure I have those wipes that the office has provided to wipe out the desk and the chair and the equipment that I use. And mask is a mandate. Like right now I'm in a closed space and there's nobody around me, and that's why I'm without a mask, but we wear masks throughout our time in office. So I guess and I think we cannot eat together in lunchroom. That's another mandate, right? So yeah, we have these mandates in office, which are great, and I think most of it is really just common sense.
Yeah, to your point, Neha, American with Disability Act (ADA)
Yeah.
requires all the employers to make the workplace safe for employees, right? So it's a
Yeah.
requirement, regardless. So
Yeah.
whether it's COVID or not, it is a responsibility of the
Yeah.
employer to make the workplace safe.
But Dilawar, I have statistics from Bureau of Labor. Okay, so the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that workers are actually quitting in record numbers from their jobs. And you know why? Because remote options aren't available. The employers are forcing them to return to work.
Yes, that's true. But Neha, on a different tangent, I would like to look at it from a different angle as well.
Yeah.
A lot of these workers who are not returning to work are like hourly rate workers who are not paid that much.
Yeah.
And if they do go back to work, they, let's suppose they are earning X amount of money, they can, if they do not return to work, they can claim unemployment benefits, right?
Which are ending in most states now, right?
But still it's there. So I think
Yeah.
this would not be a good description of the entire
Yeah.
circumstances which are there. A
Okay.
lot of I mean, like we have had this kind of examples with our
Yeah.
clients as well, where the employees were not willing to return, and they were like, why should we return for an extra $400 or $500 when we
Yeah.
can just sit back at home and enjoy, right, without doing
Yeah.
any work. but
Yeah.
but but yes, these statistics are gonna be like gonna reflect in the times to come. There would be a lot of workers who would not be willing to return to work
Right.
if the
Yeah.
employers required them to work entirely from the office. And I think with these evolving situations, how businesses, I mean, like this is general. uh, Businesses do evolve with
Right.
times.
Right.
Back in 2019 January, or like we were not even like 2019 summers, we never thought that we can work from home, right?
Not even until January of 2020, really. It
Yeah.
was only after the pandemic was announced by WHO in March of 2020 that
So
yeah.
businesses should acquaint themselves with this current circumstances, and I
Okay.
have been advising my clients, and we at the firm as well have been advising our clients to acquaint themselves,
Yeah.
make it accommodating, make it easier for their employees. It's in
Okay.
the favor of both of them, for the employees as well as for the
Yeah.
employers.
Yeah.
If the employers want to do business, they need those employees, and those
Yeah.
employees need those employers as well, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a two-way street.
It is. It is. And just for the benefit of those who are with us right now, watching us, you're part of 30 Minutes with Chugh. It's our weekly live, and it's no way a legal advice. This is just for informational purposes. And if you have any particular questions that you want to ask, you could, tag them down in the comment section. We'll try to answer them. And if you have more questions to ask, info@chugh.com is your way out. Send those questions to us and we could set up a consult if that's what is needed. And today we're talking about return to work. A lot of companies are bringing newer policies and are requesting the employees to stop working from home, no more remote jobs, come back into workspaces. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about what rights employees have and what is it that employers can do. Now, we have a question that has come in, Dilawar, and this question is, can an employer be held liable if an employee who contracted the virus at work spreads it among relatives or family members at home? I know we spoke about the liability a little while ago, but this is about really being a spreader. If the person becomes a spreader because of being at workspace.
Yeah. So again, this depends. This depends, and this is case specific. It's first of all, it's going to be a little difficult for the employee to establish that he contracted the virus through the workspace. Because I'm sure, like, if the employee is going into the office, he is going to be meeting a lot of people who are probably not the employees of that company, or but yes, the employer can be held liable because there is no federal statute which gives the employer any blanket immunity, right? So it depends which state you are in. There are a few states which have this statute in place where they do give some immunity to the employers. But regardless, if the employer can establish that they were not doing reckless conduct, there was no gross negligence on part of the employer, then yes, they will get some benefit from the courts. But if the employee is able to establish that the employer did not provide any, no, there were no COVID measures in the office space, people were just like, doing the normal stuff as they used to do before COVID, then yes, the employer is at risk.
Understood. Okay. Now, we spoke about return to work policies that the employers must have. In this return to work policy, should the employer define what is high risk worker? What is a high risk worker, and what accommodations are being provided for them?
Very good question, Neha. This is something I think employers should definitely know. So yes, first of all, return to work policies should definitely be put in place by all the employers. I highly recommend that. And again, this is a general advice, but this should definitely be there. And you, as employer, you should also define who are at high risk workers. Usually high risk workers are those which are above the age of 65, who live in nursing homes, who have underlying health conditions like heart diseases, or like had a transplant, organ transplant, or who are taking those kind of medications which reduce their immunity, right? So those are the kind of high risk workers. And yes, it is very, very important for the employers to provide these workers with accommodations. And what can be those accommodations? Provide them the flexibility of working from home. Ask them if their work can be done entirely from home. Just ask them to work from home till the time COVID is there. If it's really, really important for them to come into the office, provide them with staggered hours. Like, ask them to come in those hours where the other people are not going to be in the office. Or if you think that you have a huge chunk of people who are at risk, then maybe have a separate place for them altogether, right? This can be like
a completely separate cubicle or a completely separate, like a secluded section of the office where they could feel safer than rest of the office space.
Yes.
Okay.
So it depends which variation is easier for the employer to implement.
Right.
If they have a very huge office space and they can easily space out their employees, The people who are vaccinated can be in the one side, and the people who are unvaccinated or at high risk can be on
Right.
the other. Right?
Right. Well, that brings me to my next question. And a lot of people have been asking this question. Can an employer force their employee to be vaccinated? People are divided over this. As much as you would like the pandemic to go away and people to be vaccinated, well, everybody has the right to believe in what they do. So what do you think?
Okay, so this is again good question, and I think for a long time we have been asking since the vaccination has rolled out and
Yeah.
it has become available to the known people. It has been a question which we have been asked a lot. So yes, under ADA, employers can legally require employees to get vaccinated, but they need to establish that it is a legitimate job requirement, and the people who cannot get vaccinated for, let's suppose, religious reasons or
Yeah.
for the underlying health conditions they have, for that reason, if they cannot get vaccinated, they should provide reasonable accommodations to again those workers, right? So yes, you as an employer can require your employees to get vaccinated.
Wow. Okay. We have another question coming in. What if, a person has a family member who contracted COVID, right? And needs to take time off from work to care for that family member, right? So, and there are only certain number of leaves that are allowed. So, what happens in that case?
Yes, I think with this pandemic now, and obviously, if that person has contracted COVID, right, like your relative has contracted COVID and you're living with that relative, then obviously you also pose a threat to the other people in the office.
Yes.
You can also
Yes.
contract. So it's highly your duty to let your supervisor or your employer know immediately that someone at my home has contracted virus, and I for sure the employer should definitely provide them that flexibility of working from home, or give them some flexibility of taking some time off to take
Yeah.
care of that.
Okay. Okay. So they can request for extra time,
They
maybe
can, they
go,
can.
yeah, go on a leave without pay or something like,
Yes, for
it's,
sure, for
yeah,
sure.
you have to
and
work out
and
a
and,
middle
and
ground.
most of the employers have adopted this policy already, like in their return to work policy. This is like a guideline as well. Like some of the
Yeah.
employers are putting it, if you or someone who at your home has gotten COVID and they need some time, and you have to take care of them, you can request paid time off, or
Right.
like things like that, and
Right.
so it depends on employers entirely. But again, as a recommendation, it is viable for the employers to provide that kind of accommodation to those employees.
Right. We are, coming towards the end of our live today, and we have just about 5, 6 minutes left. I want to, from an employer's perspective, I want your expertise on what are some of the best practices for managing remote employees. We all know what happens when
So
you work from home for an extended period of time. There's hardly childcare. I mean, there's childcare now, but there are a lot of concerns around it too.
yeah, this is so this question you are trying to ask me from a perspective of an employer, right?
Correct. Yes, exactly. How do they manage remote work from home for an extended period for an employee? And because there could be an impact on the productivity, right? Although there are some reports going around saying the productivity has increased or the work has increased, but there's no substantial report on it.
Yeah, I think this again is very case specific and employer specific. It depends what kind of worker do you have, what kind of, like, how much uh, they need to report, like how many supervisors do they have, or like, but it is really, really important to be very accommodating to, this is a pandemic and this is not something which we have seen before, at
Yeah.
least the generation hasn't seen before.
Yeah.
And we need to be in that kind of situation where we are helping people out. Do not make it stressful condition for others. And I mean, like, for if any person, any reasonable person would know that this is a very stressful situation right now.
Mhm.
Just staying inside home is a big thing, right? I mean, like, when the pandemic started, I myself, I'm an extrovert. I love going out. I love meeting people. So for the first 6 months, I was literally, what is going on,
Yeah,
right? Literally
right.
for. So yes, productivity has gone down in some workplaces, but it depends on employer how they can motivate their employees. Um, I know. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and they told me that their employer, they used to have like lunches every Friday, right? Because of the COVID, now that is not happening. So what their
Right.
employer does is they send in the lunch boxes to the employee's house, right? And this is such a nice gesture, right?
Yes. Yeah.
We should have it in our firm as well. You
Well,
should,
I'm sure our supervisors are watching this and
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So
no, I totally agree. Yeah.
it entirely depends on your employer, how and what they believe can be the most productive. Be a little creative about it, right?
Yeah.
Try to engage your employees in activities, where they feel like, yes,
They feel
there's
part of
something.
the team. They don't miss not being in office. Basically, I think that's what it is. I think most of the people who are continuing to work from home, there's something called the pandemic burn. That's what's happening, right? People are getting exhausted without realizing that they are actually exhausted. And I think companies could implement some of these creative ways to kind of break that monotony, so as to say. Now, Dilawar, we are really towards the end of our this live. I want you to quickly summarize some of the key points for us from employers perspective, from employees perspective, especially for those who still are not confident enough, don't want to come into workspace. What advice would you suggest?
Yeah. So from employer perspective, a brief summary of what we have discussed already. One, it is really important that employers do ascertain whether their workforce is really necessary to, whether it's really necessary for their workforce to be in the office.
Yeah.
That's one. If it is not necessary, if they can work remotely and if they can be productive from home, then let them work from home for, as long as they can, right?
Yeah.
And if it is very necessary for you, then yes, if you are bringing your workforce into the office, do make sure that you have that COVID-19 return to work policy in place.
Yeah.
And as again, for the viewers, they can definitely, write to us, get in touch with us at info@chugh.com, and we are happy to help them with that policy. And once that policy is there, make sure that there is someone who is making sure that that policy is being implemented. It's not just like that you have a policy in place. It's really important how you are implementing it. So
Yeah.
these things are very, very crucial and very important for the employers to know and to implement. As
Yeah.
for the employees, it's really, really important for them to let their supervisor or employers know that this is their risk. These are the underlying conditions. They do not have to, but
Right.
if they feel that they fear the risk of getting or contracting corona, then definitely they need to let their employers know, and they need to work with their employees, with their employers,
Yeah.
to have some kind of an accommodation in place to work around their schedules. So,
Yeah.
and if it's not just the responsibility of the employers to make sure that the policy is implemented, it's equally the duty as well as responsibility, civil responsibility of employees to make sure
Yeah.
that they also adhere to those guidelines.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dilawar. This was really insightful. And thank you for joining us today, as you do every single week. Every Thursday, we go live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them here in the comment section, no matter what time you're watching us. Or you could write to us info@chugh.com. Thank you again for joining. My name is Neha, and that was Dilawar. We'll see you next time.